say is the overview of Austin's development landscape? Daphne.
I think that's such a broad net of a question, but I will answer the best I can. I think over the last 15 years or so, we've seen a lot of development throughout different parts of town that people didn't really even have on their radar until these developments came in. My personal favorite is the Domain, and we can dive into that a little bit more down the line. But for instance, that north side of town, the Domain opened, I want to say it was June of 2007, and people kind of knew it was there and it was cool, but it didn't really do much until later when I guess like the development domain grew.
Daphne, you're cutting off a bit.
Yeah, I thought that was just me.
Yeah, so we're talking about the
So-
domain.
So just for everybody that's watching,
Yep,
Daphne is at an airport in between
Y'all
travel.
back.
Yeah, so so we know what's going on. Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, cool. I can hear you guys too.
Daphne's in
Are we
Boston.
frozen again? No, we're good. Okay. Is there anything I'm in Boston. Yeah. Is there anything you guys want me to repeat?
We missed your whole domain
Did it cut
spiel.
out?
You talked about the domain.
Seriously, son of a gun.
The whole domain spiel.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's frustrating. Okay. Happy to give you the domain spiel again. So, so the domain we have an outdoor shopping center in North Austin. It started, I think it opened in June of 2007, and people definitely knew it was there and they were aware of it, but it didn't really change the landscape of that area until the second portion of it, like Rock Rose, opened in 2016. And that zip code in North Central Austin, 78758, started becoming a lot more popular to do there. The domain feel, so it was a whole different demographic. There was a high-end buying homes, remodeling them, and there's a new group of folks moving in, for instance.
Yeah, I like
Catch
how
it
you
that
brought
time?
up the domain, because the domain, it's
Okay.
such like live in regards to the apartment complexes, work, office buildings, play, there's shopping, and then Rock Rose, like you said, the play aspect of that mixed use project started developing, and it's the spot. You know, a lot of developments could just be residential living, but live work play is an ideal shapeshifter in the landscape. How'd you describe the developments in Austin, Ian?
For us.
Yeah, I would say that I'm extremely bullish on the live work play concept, because I think that that's one of the characteristics of Austin in general that people migrated for. People want to be able to walk places, bike to places, not have to go far for groceries, all in the community they live in. And the thing is, when you start looking at a lot of these suburbs, they lose that luster and they lose that ability to walk around and just enjoy your environment without having to guzzle gas, right? And so when you have these areas like the Domain is a great example, it's like not everybody lives downtown. So where else can you have these? The Domain was a perfect example, but they just, it was one of those projects they didn't really see all of the potential. And now it's like, dude, every city needs multiple of these. Our little downtowns are fine, but you need a place where young tech entrepreneurs, after college people, people that are settling here for the first time at any age demographic don't have to rely on vehicles. Think of it like a little European town or something. And so that's kind of what all of these out, and that is one of the big growth factors for Austin. I'm a bullish investor in that regard.
Yeah. Is there any other projects that you think are successful projects that shaped Austin?
So right now you've got probably the biggest and most well known, but Mueller, I would actually argue, is a little more known to the local community, right? And I think it's done. I think Mueller was set up really well because it was basically a canceled or abandoned airport that they relocated, and they were like, "Well, we've got this land. How do we turn it into something that people want to be at?" And it's taken a while. It's taken a while for Mueller to turn into the thing that has everybody drawn to it. And for those of you who've never been to Mueller, the thing that makes it so wonderful is it feels like I'll call it like an upscale Austin, but it has food trucks. It's around water, so you see ducks, you see families, you see young people, you see older people, you have restaurants, you have a lot of quirky things like coffee company is there, Lick ice cream is there. So you have some like semi-corporate, but also local brands. You have apartments there. You have houses, single family. You have townhomes. You have a movie theater. It's near medical. It's near a shopping center. HEB's right there. Best Buy's right there. You have literally everything that you need to thrive in a small neighborhood community, and it's all from basically land that nobody wanted because of what floodplain and annexing and all that sort of stuff. It was trash land that they turned into a really cool spot.
Yeah, and the difference between, I would say, like if you're a buyer, right, and you're moving to Austin and you're looking at Domain versus Mueller, the actual Domain complex is apartment buildings, and but you could live around the Domain area, right? Mueller, that whole airport was completely master planned with new construction and a ton of residential. I think the difference is the Domain was like a shopping. I guess the work play part was more of a development piece there. Mueller, the live part, was more a development piece. So that's part of how you're going to make your decisions on what you think the future of that development's going to look like.
Well, and this kind of goes back to the original intent of the subject is what about the places that are in progress or have been created that are sort of falling apart?
Right.
So I want to talk about Leander Lagoon, but I know that there's a bigger one
Do
that's been looming, and so I'm just going to kind of step back. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a question too is, right, you're looking at the Domain, you're looking at Mueller. Some of these are master plan communities. How do you, so as a buyer, the point of what we're doing is making sure that you're educated about the future of your real estate purchase. Because if you go on the resale, or even if you put a deposit down, you're waiting for a year for this project to be built. How do you know it's going to reach the finish line? If it does reach the finish line on the resale, how is the rest of the development going to look? Um, any interesting projects you're looking at, or any like advice you would give to a buyer that's deciding on what to look at? Or do you want to talk about a project that's failed and then we kind of break it apart from there?
I'm happy to kind of give some advice for buyers, like what to look for. And then I feel like Ian probably has something up his sleeve. He sort of nodded towards that. But I'll just share like a quick story. When I bought my first house in 2016, yeah, in 2016, I bought a brand new townhome in a development in Pflugerville, like the south, I guess this would be like the southwest corner of Pflugerville. And I was already sold on the house, but the builder representative told me, there's going to be a new domain over here in Pflugerville. You've got to get this house now. And like that, again, that was not the sales point for me. But he was really pushing on that there was going to be a domain, and there was going to be like a park and shopping and things to do and all this stuff. And Rock Rose had just opened. So at that point, I think the domain was like a 14-minute drive from that house. And he was like, oh, this is going to be 5 minutes from the community and blah, blah, blah. We just have to wait a couple years, etc. So that was 2017 and 2016, and here we are, 2024. 8 years later, there's no domain anywhere in Pflugerville. There's nothing like the domain in Pflugerville, and I don't think there will be. And I only bring this up because I feel like a lot of times when I go see new communities with clients, the builder representative is always like, we're going to get a domain in a couple years. And it never happens. And I always tell that to my clients, like, put zero weight on that, zero whatsoever. It's like we
You
always
think
want to
that was
focus on what are the priorities, like what's a distance.
would you say that was a misrepresentation on that salesperson, and then that company also, because this is about the company too. You know, they say something shady, maybe that's a rep, but maybe the
Say that again,
construction
it cut
could,
out. I'm sorry.
yeah. So I'm wondering if it's on the buyer to hear that and decipher, or is it the rep could be a little shady, and if that's a representation of the company, then the construction might be a little shady. Like, how do you read that situation?
And that's a good question. At the time, construction with shady information didn't cross over. Like the quality of that actual house was really wonderful. Um, I think he was honestly excited, and I think a lot of times these builder reps will get excited because it's like, wow, we have something else that we can, some information we can share that potentially is going to help us make a sale. And you can't fault people for that. It's us as it's up to us as consumers to really do our research and not just follow blindly. So that's what I have to say about that.
I don't know. I don't like it when reps do that.
No,
I
I
mean,
don't
think
love
about
it,
it. We're
but I
sales
think
reps,
that's
right?
part.
Like, do you go around
Mm.
saying stuff like that?
No, but I think that's part of like the value to, I guess, a realtor adds, right? It's like it's our job if we hear something like that to tell a client, like, okay, that sounds cool, but let's not romanticize it because it probably won't happen. So don't put any eggs in that basket.
Yeah. And again, however much we talk about it, the extra layer of value that a realtor can add, because then you have another set of eyes on what's going on there. What do you think about that situation, Ian?
Dude, I have a completely different approach. I think it depends on your a couple things. One, what is your risk tolerance when you're investing in something, especially when it comes to real estate? A lot of people are buying real estate for themselves and not thinking about what's happening in 5, 10, 20 years. They think that it's their first home is their forever home, and that's generally not the case. So when I meet with clients, I try to really understand, are you going to A, try to live in this forever, even though I don't believe them? Are you going to try to live in this forever? B, are you going to buy this and then rent it out? Or C, are you going to buy this and sell this? And if so, how long? Right? It's usually B or C, right? They're going to sell it or they're going to rent it out. Rarely do they live in it forever. There are a handful. So because of that, I have that sit down or consultation with a buyer. That is my focus. And so then you have to figure out, are they high risk, high reward people? The risk is that this stuff will never come to fruition. But imagine the reward if you're the first person in one of these areas where it's live, work, play. Imagine if you had a house in Mueller before Mueller was a thing, because I know people like that.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're selling it for California house prices. Good for them, right? But it's because they're essentially early adopters. It's a very different type of person. Some people are like, let me just wait and see what happens. So to answer that question and to kind of give a different perspective from what Daphne was saying, it's like it really depends on the client and what their lifestyle is like. Some people might never want to own a house, not care about it at all, and they're only going to live in Austin for the 4 years that they're in college. That's a very different person than somebody that's uprooting their entire family from, let's say, Chicago, Illinois, and relocating to Austin for the long-term opportunity. And hitting some of these areas that are really good long-term investments, rental portfolio properties, and all these other things.
Yeah. And at that, you could plan all that stuff, and you might still have to uproot. You have to understand if there's a possibility that you have to sell in a year or two.
Well, that's the real problem.
Yeah.
The real problem is that we have these outliers that doesn't allow us to control 100% of the scenario. Babies are a big one. Relationships. It's always love or money, right? Relationships, jobs, babies, all of those.
Right.
And unfortunately, deaths are just powerful as births, right? And that's the kind of thing. Like one of my best friends lost his father a couple days ago, and I'm sitting here in the back of my mind. I'm like, oh man, are they going to sell their house? Are they going to move back up? Are they going to move his mother here? Like, what are the things that they have to do now that was unexpected? And they've already lived here 20 years or something like that, like way before I was here. They've lived here so long, and they've grown a family here. So what does that do for them? Like, what makes the most sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so people try to logistically coordinate that.
Right. And I'm sorry to hear about your friend's father's loss. And
Tragic.
even though it's a damper on the mood, like that's also real, right? Life, it's part of life. So contingencies are things to think about. What projects have you seen out there that have been canceled? Maybe somebody got in over their head, or any stories out there about bad projects that you've seen? I don't know if we have to put the company on blast or the neighborhood, but we do need to tell the viewer what to watch out for.
For sure. Ian, do you think we're at a point where we can talk about the Crystal Lagoon?
Oh yeah, I'm opening it right now. Right now. Let me hit share.
Okay, cool. I think we both have a lot to say about this. JJ, do you have some beef you want to unpack about the Leander Lagoon?
No, luckily, I feel like I dodged bullets. You know, I've seen stuff like somebody may have. It's not unheard of. Someone's gonna buy a house by this supposed development, and spoiler alert, it's not happening right now.
You know, yeah. You know,
here's the frustration.
looking at these photos, it reminds me of.
Ladies first.
Go
Daphne.
ahead, Daphne. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Oh,
It was just lag.
Go for it. Okay, well, if I'm connected again, yeah. If looking at these photos, it reminds me of the documentary for the Fire Festival.
They should have some real estate development documentaries. A cautionary tale. I think is just as important as Ja Rule and the Fire Festival.
The problem is they still have the website up.
Yep.
If someone's not educated or not watching the Real Estate Lab podcast for Austin, shout out, like, really think about this. This is still out here and it's still collecting information for people. Yet we know that this has been canceled. Why are they still allowing this? Like, why do they still have this up? Right? The reason is because that's how advertising works. So I'm going to use Zillow. This is not slander, but I'm going to use Zillow as an example. There are people that will put their house on Zillow, or builders that have a house out there that shows us for sale. The house isn't for sale, but they want to collect your information for their next project. And that's what's happening here. So these key partners still have to stay in touch. Either A, they revive or revitalize the project because they get more investors, or like last press release was 2021, or B, they take this information and they use it for their next project and say, hey, remember this project that was going to be perfect? We're going to do it over here. Instead of Leander, it's going to be in Maine or next to the Tesla plant. We still need this, right? So, but yeah, it was a very lofty project. And when I saw this release, I was literally in Hawaii for the first time. I was in Hawaii looking around, watching this, and I thought, oh man, you know how big of a change of an impact that will have on Leander and the surrounding suburbs, Cedar Park and Georgetown and Liberty Hill, if they brought a Hawaii beach resort that was public access, where you could buy condos and go to see the movies in 107-degree weather. Huge. That is a huge opportunity. I was so excited, still excited, because for them to let this die, or for this to die, I think hurts a lot of possibility in the area. I would love to see something like this revitalized. I would invest in a heartbeat.
Did you have any clients? Did you have any clients making decisions based off of something like that?
100%. I absolutely did. I absolutely did. I had clients that would make decisions based on the proximity of this. Maybe not buying directly in here, but the proximity. So we knew where this was going to be. And there's a lot of popular neighborhoods around here. I'm going to give an example. There's a neighborhood in Leander called Blockhouse Creek. It's like 75% rentals. And those rentals didn't start stacking up until this was announced. Perfect 3-2 neighborhood, great square footage, good return on investment or yield for your payment that people were giving. It was wonderful. Houses weren't, only a couple, a decade or two old. Oh, it was phenomenal. And it was right. Some of them backed up to this. It was a genius opportunity.
That neighborhood had another rumor that I think when I first got into real estate, I listened to a lot of rumors thinking I had the inside track. And then I realized I had the inside track on just more rumors and I still have to go another layer. Because one rumor I heard about Blockhouse was that it's in Leander, is going to get annexed into Cedar Park. I heard that like in the 2000s.
Yeah, but that doesn't actually change. Well, I mean, it does change a lot. Don't get me wrong. It can change a lot, but it doesn't change how great of a project this is, right? And the fact that it's close proximity. You're not buying near here for the schools. You're buying near here for the entertainment value.
Yeah. Either, I think what's interesting is people they can have different criteria, and it's kind of like which rumor or development might hit that. Like, is it the soccer field or is it a school annexation? Is it a artificial beach? So definitely don't get too into your feelings. I think maybe that's the theme. You could get pulled into excitement.
Well, again, it's high risk, high reward. So imagine like if somebody was flipping a house, right? They buy the house thinking about the opportunity. And they do their numbers and all that, but it's not like they're not going to buy the house when the numbers look really good. And that's the same thing here. The numbers looked perfect and it's a great opportunity. Project got canceled. Just like if you bought the house and you take it apart and you decide and you find out that there's termites and foundation issues. You're like, oh, sometimes that just happens.
Well, the thing is, if I may, I remember in 2021, I work with a lot of relocation clients in general. And in 21, I think it was 2020 and 21, Leander was listed. I can't remember if it was the number 1 or the number 5 suburb in the US as far as like growth rates and opportunity. And I had a lot of people that would reach out that were originally wanting to buy in Leander because they saw that opportunity. And the conversation I would have with them is like, yes, there are houses available when there weren't any houses available anywhere. I was like, there are some now and then here. It's still relatively affordable and there is supposed to be a lot of projected growth. And I would tell them, however, today there is nothing in Leander and it feels like you're out in the middle of nowhere. A really nice neighborhood is Deerbrook. Once you're in the neighborhood, it's great. There's lots of beautiful houses, beautiful amenities, really nice neighbors, all this kind of really great stuff. But there really is nothing to do. If you need to leave your house, you're going to drive 20 minutes to go anywhere. And I would tell that to potential clients and they're like, well, that's okay. We want to check out Leander because it's going to be close to this Crystal Lagoon. And then I would follow up with, that may not happen. And oftentimes it would get to the point where we would go to Leander and look at all these new communities that they thought they would like. And they just couldn't deal with the fact that it was far from everything. And those people, I don't think I sold maybe one home in Leander in 21 and 22 combined, simply because it wasn't appealing enough to people to wait for this big maybe project. Yeah.
Yeah, Deerbrook. I even heard about they're building around the rail. Like there's a rail there.
That's called North Line. I've got that up.
Yeah.
Actually, I did have a buyer that decided on that. Not necessarily because of the rail, but it did come up. And It's just interesting because you have to like really dive into the developer's story. Is that mall by
Well,
the rail line really being built?
let, let's talk about that specifically. The rail line. How many clients do you have that bought in West Pflugerville or West Round Rock or Cedar Park or Leander, East Leander, all because they had access to the one rail line that goes through the suburbs to downtown Austin, the Metro line, I mean. That is a conversation I've had with multiple clients. It's like, does that matter or will that matter to you? I had a client that they worked for the state. And so they specifically wanted to buy in the suburbs and then take the rail down to the city. And it made perfect sense for them. And that was absolutely it. And then, I don't know if you remember this, but the Leander mayor, I think it was Leander, one of the new mayors after this whole thing was done, the mayor goes, I don't see enough people using it. I think it's a terrible project. We're going to try canceling it. And then the city essentially rioted, the people in the city that use it, and said that better not happen. They were trying to cancel the only rail line in the Austin, Texas area. We need help, for crying out loud. We need more public transportation. How are you going to cancel it? It's terrible. So yeah, I think a lot of people do look at how's their lifestyle. Will this public transit help? Because then you don't have to sit in traffic for an hour going downtown, even at the busiest of times. And the rail was like clockwork, every 30 minutes or something like that. It was really cool. It is really cool. It still exists. So projects around there, I feel could be really, really great for people that know that it exists and use it consistently.
That's interesting because
That area would.
Go ahead, Daphne.
I think I'm lagging. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was thinking about the complication of even moving by something like a rail that's established, and the fact that the city can still de-establish that. So there's a lot of risk, I think that's also just things to consider. That's the whole point of this particular podcast. If there's a certain project or like an economic anchor, to really understand the risk of what that might look like as best as you can before you roll the dice.
I wanted to pull this up because this is another Leander project called North Line. This one's actually it's under construction right now. Okay. And this is what you're talking about, next to the rail line. The whole thing is that
exactly
related to the rail line. And they have these really cool sketches that they hired an artist and pictures of bubbles, and they're selling the lifestyle and the fact that they're going to have bakeries and all that sort of stuff. So it shows exactly where it is, right near the 183A toll, right? There's going to be lake features, which is really just man-made retention ponds. Don't let it fool you, but it looks nice if they do it right. And then you've got all this commercial, right? So your different restaurants and stuff, and then you have residential, whether it's townhomes or condos or single family. Oh no, all multifamily residential. But it's right off the highway, surrounded by both sides. It wouldn't have been far from Leander Lagoon. And you've got water, and you've got a beautiful walking section, and you've got your stores. You have everything. So yeah, I was just there, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, a week and a half ago, and it is moving along quite nicely. They're doing it. This is great. And it's right near the new HEB. They've got a bunch of hospitals that they're building around here, which is great. And it's right along the rail. Lots of different
I appreciate that they put their completion
partners.
date for 2030.
I love that timeline. Yeah.
So you've got your fact sheet, actual facts. You've got an info line, all that sort of stuff. It's more real than the other. I haven't checked their Instagram lately, but that's the kind of stuff where it's like, okay, well, who's keeping this stuff active to the public other than us, right? But yeah, 2031 is complete build out. So somebody buys a house. So all the people that bought a house for Leander Springs will still benefit from this. But that's a really long time.
Yeah, you're still holding on to that house.
Yeah, most of those people aren't even thinking of 2031. They were thinking of 2025. Right? By 2031, most of those people that have houses that would have been rentals that they purchased in 2018 or 2019, based on how they set their finances, based on the way their bank accounts set up, they've already had this paid off. So now it's 100% equity and only collecting the rent for these properties as this is finishing completion. So you can live right across the street essentially from this really beautiful project with all this cool stuff, the second domain in Leander.
And the rail line. I think that's a good combo. And I feel the momentum here and I see the timeline. So there we go. Putting out another pitch.
Well, and the part that people may miss is it if you're, let's say, I'll use your wife as an example, JJ, right? I don't know what her plans are during the summer, but what if during the summer she wanted to, I don't know, run a daycare or do a little bakery or something because she works during the school year because she's a teacher, right?
Right.
Yeah. If she wanted to have a little office space, this is a possibility now if she lived in this neighborhood because the retail is open for lease. So you have people that are coming in and relocating to an area, but it's what are the other people doing and how does that impact the area? Because it's not just that immediate house that you're buying. It's all the people that come in and what their growth does for the environment, what their opportunities now are for the environment. You're on a rail line, you could have more people that work downtown. You could have an artist, a musician live in this neighborhood because it's far more affordable than living on Rainy Street and having your own home. And it's got the rail line, so you just got to get up, get your guitar and head downtown for a couple dollars a month. Yes, Daphne.
Note about the rail. Yeah. The rail line, though, the only downside of it is that it stops running at midnight. So it's like they have to extend the hours if they're actually going to have artists live in the suburbs because bars close at like 2:33.
Well, I think that would be a wonderful thing, but I think they need to see the
city,
use case. They need to see the use.
Yeah.
So this will improve the use case of the rail line, which should improve extend the hours of operation. And the funding for more rail lines in more cities.
Yeah, I would like to take a stance on better. It could be a design flaw or the messaging about you using the rail line. Like it has its issues with how accessible it is, but if we start using it more and working on it more, I think those hours would change. So that's something I would like to put out there, that an urban rail line would be great. And there's a lot of benefits to rail.
Well, and now look, you've got hotel and parks. So parks bring families because they bring dogs and children. And then the hotel is wonderful because it brings travelers. So how many people come to the Austin area, but they have family in Leander? They don't actually want to stay downtown. They want to stay in Leander, right? And they could book at a Hilton or Garden Inn or something like that. And that's great, but it doesn't have all stuff around them, right? So now they could stay at a place that's kind of vibrant. And so you can spend some time with your family and you can spend some time away from your family. You don't need to be shown around all the time. Same thing for clients. I have many clients that'll come in and I'm like, stay in the area that you plan to buy in. And they're like, there's nothing here. I was like, well, there is if you have a car. But also you can see how quiet it is in the evening and you get a feel for the environment at all hours, weekends, traffic, all that sort of stuff. So this is a wonderful way to lure people into what the suburbs of Austin are like.
Okay, this looks great. Let's get into the dark cautionary tales. What project were you or builder, or you don't have to name drop them, or area or neighborhood, were you talking about, Ian? You said there is a development looming. Was that something? Or was that the Leander one?
Yeah, that one was the Leander one, but you also have StoryBuilt that you were going to talk about, and I think that's a really good one.
Yeah, because they actually were building a lot. And I have this StoryBuilt commercial that I think could put the cool urban feel out there. Because they essentially were building a lot of that urban infill, like around Central Austin, but all over town. And they were a developer. If you could help me screen share, Ian, they were a developer also developing outside of Austin. So, like, I believe in Dallas. And as I worked with clients, I noticed that StoryBuilt as a developer was also selling their fair share of inventory. So they actually were closing projects and selling, and they continued new projects. Like, this is stuff, these are all neighborhoods, whether it's low rise or detached condominiums or standalone. They're winning these awards. So the interesting story about this is they're closing and people are moving in and on these projects. And you could see they have a little bit of a mixed use, sometimes an amenity center or not, or whatnot, offices. So specifically, this hit my radar on the cautionary tale part. Was I was on a realtor property tour, and a listing agent had one of these StoryBuilt listings. So her buyer bought for maybe 1.1, 1.2 during the hype of everything. And the project stopped midway. So the amenity center wasn't finished. And you could see this particular video is labeled a StoryBuilt. That's the name of the company. StoryBuilt on corporate greed, where they shut down continued development of that project. And these people, even though they bought at 1.1, they're listed at like 900 while the market crashed and everything, right? In the past couple of years. And it just sucks because you go to this low rise mixed use project, and the listing agent's there explaining that the gym is finished, but the offices aren't done. And you see land like of another building that hasn't even been completed. So there was a lot of uncertainty on that exit for that particular buyer.
Can you remind me to do a parallel with this and Whisper Valley after we're done talking about this one?
Yeah, and I think
yeah,
just the concept of even like, how do you know when to trust a developer or not? Like, how do you know what's going on at Whisper Valley? How do you know what's going on at StoryBuilt? You have any advice for buyers that are looking at different projects?
That's a good question. I honestly don't know that I would have good advice for that. I think what a lot of us, like me included, I would think this is a big developer. They've got a lot of projects. They must be trustworthy. And if you are buying a condo and you're financing it, the lender's going to be looking at the HOA stuff and making sure that all that is in order as well. So it's like you feel like you're doing all this legwork to confirm and make sure that you're going into a solid investment. But I guess who knows?
And here's a question.
Do you guys have, I'm curious if you guys have.
Could you look at it like this? Like, StoryBuilt's a startup and a David Weekley, is a more like a D.R. Horton. Like, some of these builders have been around for like 100 years. Do you always go with the corporate, the one that's been around for decades, that's been building in numerous states? Or, how do you look at some of these companies?
well, I would say that the big thing is their reputation matters. So I pay close attention to who buys who, what the acquisitions are like, so I don't lose that. I need to make a flipping note chart, right? But a great example is D.R. Horton has been, I don't know if currently are, but has been one of the largest landowners in the state of Texas.
Right.
Which was kind of a weird thought, right? You're like, really? Wow. So when people are making these developments, the reason why D.R. Horton does a whole neighborhood is because they own all the land. They just buy all the land cash. What other builders do, and I'm not going to name particular builders on this, but some builders will promise to buy, and they'll make payments on a couple lots. And then as they fill those out and sell, then they'll move on to the next lots, and then they'll move on to the next lots. But they're paying the developer of that land. And that developer could be D.R. Horton, which is hilarious because they own the land, right? Like they're the ones always making money no matter what. And so it's interesting because I've seen neighborhoods where they started, where a builder started in a neighborhood that was developing on phase 1, and in phase 2 or phase 3, the builder's not there anymore because they couldn't afford it. And they ended up selling their lots back to a different builder or back to the developer because they had bad planning or bad product or bad timing because it didn't sell. And so I'm going to talk about, I think every podcast for the last 2 months, I've talked about Austin Park. I really like the neighborhood. I like the neighborhood, but they have 100 houses active for sale right now, not including what the builder's inventory is. And they touted, we're going to build 20,000 houses. But they said this in 2022. It made sense in 2022. And then lumber prices shot up, and even the cost of flipping the screws and aluminum and logistics because of politics of getting all of these materials and steel and everything. Oh, it was chaos. And so all of that chaos caused the builders to have a really hard time. They had to start cutting corners on things. And now you've kind of got this backlog of active homes, plus people that lost jobs or decided to relocate that had moved here from another city. A lot of them bought in Easton Park and now they've left. And so now you have all these vacant properties. There are properties in Easton Park that have been on the market for like 400 days.
Builders?
It's a lot of active right now. Lots. That's what I'm saying. So people that had a hard time buying houses, oh man, you want to talk about an opportunity zone.
Yeah.
What? There were so many opportunities in that neighborhood today. Will they stay that way? As soon as the interest rates drop, listen, this is not a promise. This is just economics. As soon as the interest rate drops, more people are able to afford the homes, and you'll still have a lot of homes that are sitting active on the market. And so if you are able to pick up one where there's 100 houses and they're all, I'm not going to say the same, but they all fit in this little kind of criteria bubble. Oh my gosh. And what you don't want is investors buying that. You want people that are going to live in this neighborhood, beautiful neighborhood, lots of parks, all that stuff. It's so cool. And so these are the things that people aren't seeing, especially if they're on the outside looking in. People are in like Seattle or North Carolina or some of these other places, like real estate's crazy here. Colorado, real estate's crazy. In Austin, no, you have an opportunity right now. It's an opportunity zone. But yeah, it wasn't moving as fast because the homes weren't selling as fast, and the builders are going to latch on to the opportunity in the moment. And so now you can go in and work with your realtor or real estate professional, end up collaborating with the builder or with some of these sellers, and end up getting a house where $50,000 towards your closing cost taken care of. Like what? It's crazy. End rant. Sorry. Gosh.
I think here's one way to look at it with inflation and what's been going on from 2020 to 2022, those 2 years, even a little bit building up to that, right? I think when things get super hyped up and you get this herd mentality and this big push, it's also a time to be very careful. Maybe also a time to get in on it earlier, because now that it hit that peak, especially Austin, I would go out and say there's a bit of a cliff dive going on with pricing and inventory. I think this is more of a clearer time. Like you could tell if a developer is going to develop. You can tell what's real in momentum. You get a better price. You're not really fighting anybody off. No one's all about these interest rates right now. So, you can't have an inflated price with high interest rates. So there's like less cloudy inflation going on. It's just hard to time everything, right? There's like these waves. So
the problem is you can have high prices with high interest rates. And how that happens is when someone bought the house in 2020 or 2021, and due to life circumstances, they didn't know that they needed to sell it, and they still owe this much.
I meant on the like the entry, like when people are coming in and the interest rates are high, like right now.
That's where we're at. That's the problem. The problem is we're there where people paid this much for houses.
Yeah.
They need to sell it for at least that much, but the market dictates that it's only worth this much because there's so much inventory. And that incongruency is a challenge for some people right now. For the buyers that have cash that are ready, it could be a great, great opportunity. And like specifically Easton Park is almost another live, work, play zone. Right? In 7 years, anybody who buys a house, mark my words, write it down, add it to something. In 7 years, if someone buys today in Easton Park, they will be very happy in 7 to 10 years that they did make that purchase. Right? And even if somebody bought 2 years ago, if they hold on to this house for until 2030 or 2032-ish, they will be very happy. Again, you can come back to me on that, and I'm trying to think of a number. I'll take you out to coffee if I'm wrong.
Let's kind of do our best to read the situation here.
Yeah.
Regarding developers' history and reputation, which you should be checking out as a buyer, because there's like a trajectory of the company. Throw out a few of the builder companies in the area.
Yeah, or your realtor should know.
Your realtor should know.
I love this, right? Or can do the research.
Can we talk about builders? Do you want to talk about builders?
I'm going to talk.
Did you
Daphne first?
Yeah, I think we should. Yeah. So let's start with D.R. Horton. So Ian mentioned that they own, yeah, is it? Okay.
It's a marketing thing.
Ian mentioned that Horton owns their own property. And I've always told clients, especially like first-time home buyers, I always tell them you're going to get a great floor plan and probably a kind of like good location, because Horton does own their property, and I think they buy it early on, or they get a killer deal on it. And then for these first-time buyers, I also tell them you're going to get everything, basically all your costs taken care of. However, that does come at the cost of quality of construction. I think after 2015 or 2016 is when we started to see the quality of construction for all builders go down, and Horton, I think, led the way. They used to have options to customize a little bit, not anything crazy, certainly not like Toll Brothers. But now it's like you walk into a D.R. Horton community and it's like, choose your floor plan, but you're getting this color package or this color package. We already chose it for you, the end. So, and like I've got one rental that's a Horton house, and it's from 2017, and it's got so many issues because the quality was so poor. I got a killer deal on it, so I didn't care so much at the time, but I'm like, I can't imagine somebody that's buying their first home and not really aware of these things. That could be really, what's the word? Expensive, frustrating. Yeah.
And a lot of that too is like the cost analysis. Like, do you understand for this price amount, you're getting this location? This is kind of what's going on with the company. Is that something you can live with? Right? Because obviously if we wanted like the highest quality stuff, we would get it. And then there's like a payment ceiling and we make do with the options.
So I'm going to give an alternate perspective. I like this. I like playing devil's advocate or opposite advocate. I don't know. I don't like the term devil's advocate, but you know.
Sure.
So some people are buying knowing that they're going to rent out a home, and then they just want to pay the lowest price where they can rent it out for the most money. And in that scenario, oftentimes I'm like, D.R. Horton could be a wonderful opportunity. It could be, right? You just don't go and get the 5-bedroom home in a neighborhood where most of the houses are 3-2. And if you want to be budget conscientious, That's different than what's my profitability on this home. I only have, 20,000 to put down on this investment property, but I need it to be a 3.2. Listen, I'll take you somewhere. I'll make it work. Right? Like, so it could work for people. And quality of construction is interesting because while I agree that there are tiers to the overall quality of construction, what I've noticed is a lot of it is based on the construction manager of that particular neighborhood and how many houses they're having to juggle at once. And it doesn't really matter the builder at that point, right? DR Horton has had some pretty terrible builds, but they've had some pretty great builds. I've seen some DR Horton homes and I'm like, man, they built it really well, right? Same thing goes for Highland homes or Chesmar. I'll use Chesmar as an example. I've seen Chesmar homes. I was like, this home is phenomenal, practically flawless. And I've seen some other Highland homes where the buyers were complaining, the process was trash, everything was like, oh my gosh, what is happening? This is supposed to be Highland. You see what I mean? Like I've seen in both cases. But who's really at fault because of that? Is it the time? Is it the construction manager? All those things. So just because you bought DR Horton, don't think that you got a bad home. And just because you bought a Toll Brothers, don't think you got a good one. It's really important.
So how do you answer the question if someone's like, what do you think about like Taylor Morrison versus Tri-Point? Those are like two builders in the area.
Daphne, you want to answer this? I'll come back. Or I can answer it either way.
Can you? It cut out. What did you say? Ask the question again.
What if your buyer's like, should I get Taylor Morrison or Tri-Point as a builder?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, when I do have clients that are very much on the fence like that, I do think it's important to go out and look at the community and look at what they're kind of like what Ian said, like what are they building? Like who's here? What do all these other homes look like at framing and at sheetrock and when they're putting in the cabinets? Like, do they look like they're being well maintained? Is the integrity? Did we lose Ian?
I think we did.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll keep going though. He'll hop back on. But yeah, it's like the integrity of the build and the way that they're doing things. And is the builder communicative? Are they keeping us up there? Welcome back.
That was so weird. I'm sorry.
That's okay. But yeah, I think before it's almost, it's just like Ian said, it's almost like community, almost house based. You know, is this community well run? Is this exact house being managed correctly through the build process?
Love it. So macro to micro. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I like that, but I feel like the step that I try to employ just before that one is what's your budget? Because a lot of people don't realize the quality or the namesake of a company is a big portion of what dictates the budget. Because if your budget, if you're going in and you want to spend $500,000, I do not know why you're looking at your VSO for a Taylor Morrison home. I just don't. Right? But if you're spending, if your budget's $3 million and you're like, what's the best that I can get? That changes the conversation significantly.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to put some closing thoughts on here because we got like a few minutes left. It sounds like from a macro level, you want to pay attention to the developments, the developers. We like the timelines. Be skeptical about things you hear. There could be hyped up sales representatives in certain areas that might say something. Think about your exit strategies because you don't know how long you might be there or how short you might be there. So take all that into consideration. And then when it comes to a micro level, you want to do more research on the builder and to get more of an inside track, even the construction manager, and definitely to go out and look at the properties, feel it out, go to the neighborhood. The neighborhoods could be different. The construction managers could be different. Any other closing thoughts or advice for viewers that are looking at Austin and considering all the different aspects of development?
I don't know that everyone gives enough credence to what the job of a realtor is, but I think that that's important in the context of this conversation. A realtor can be your boots on the ground. They can be your second set of eyes. They can have a lot of tribal knowledge and history on the builder and the acquisitions and all of the information that you can sit there and research, and you can spend hours and days to do that. But like the three of us have already lived a lot of it in the last few years. We've lived it. We've seen exactly how terrible some of the builders can be and how wonderful some of the builders can be. And just asking us the question is this much of the entire process. So in a time where there's a lot of turbulence in the conversation around real estate, I love that we have more value to give than people may know. And especially when it comes to building new construction on top of resale and some of these other things. There's a lot going on. There's a lot. You want to be careful, and you want to have professional help. And that, like this, I'm not saying this for a pitch. I'm saying this because you almost always ask, if you're spending a lot of money on something, you're going to ask people. And if you don't trust one particular realtor or one particular builder or something, you ask somebody else. Get a second, third opinion. I don't care, but just do the thing that makes the most sense for your family, but don't cut parts of the process out because you don't think you need it. That is the biggest mistake, because these evaluations are the things that we're here for our clients to do.
Nicely said, Ian.
Can I want to add to that.
Yeah, close us out.
I want to add to that
Let
just a
them
little
know.
bit before we wrap up. Yeah, but in yes, in 2020 and 22, it was a mad dash. And I remember home buyers and home sellers would be like, I got to buy, I got to sell, and we just go. And I don't know about you guys, but I know I tried to do a full buyer and seller consultation. And sometimes just because of time and the market, there were so many things that didn't happen the way that they needed to. I worked with so many people that were relocating, and they're like, we're coming into town this week. We got to buy a house. And I'm like, let me start looking at houses for you right now, because that's how it was. And now, with the market being what it is, we have so much more time to really massage the process into our buyer and sellers brain, that I feel like we actually get to offer so much more value than we have been able to in the last couple of years. And though it is a tougher market for a lot of people, sellers, and even home buyers, it gives us a lot of time to chill and really educate ourselves and help educate our clients so they can actually make the best decision.
Love it. Well, that's time, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate y'all tuning in to the Real Estate Podcast. Tune in next week. We'll have another episode for you. Everything for you buyers, sellers, and investors of Austin real estate.